Part 97. Something strange is coming? Fortunately, I am the king of hell of the 10th palace. Author, Shiyubuletin Chigwa. Chapter 970. Looking at the content displayed on the chat interface, Shenjian was as cold as ice. The person who killed him was undoubtedly provoking the authority of the underworld. Madness teeters on the edge of his bottom line. To this, Shenjian has and will only have one choice. Kill anyone who tries to challenge the majesty of the underworld, whether it is an individual, a group, or a large supernatural place, should die. The Fallen Angel organization was like this, the vampires were like this, and the Western Holy See was like this. Just because he is kind does not mean he is generous. King Yama, who is the leader? Lord of Heaven? The first person in a thriller game? Finish this sentence. There was no response from the other party for a long time. It was like there was no time to respond. Shenjian's eyes flashed. It is generally understood how bad the situation of the princess of the principality is. Think about it. He walked out of the temple. We went directly to the Buddhist hall where the ghost Buddha mother was. This is not only a place for self-cultivation for the mother of the Buddhist kingdom, but also a simple office space for daily coordination of the affairs of the true Buddhist temple. This day. Quite unlucky. It happens to be the time when the ghost Buddha mother's daily discussions take place. When Shenjian came here, the first thing he saw was the true Buddhist disciple waiting outside the courtyard. It can be seen that the true Buddha's face does not look good at this time. There's no way you can get in if you stand outside. But after seeing Shenjian walking towards him, his expression immediately changed, and he regained his previous fortitude, and gave a smile that seemed to be forced out. A posture of being forced to show brotherhood and respect. My mother was discussing something inside and asked me to watch from outside. She said that no one else could come in and disturb me. Said. The true Buddha even looked Shenjian up and down. Just say it clearly, you, the fake, are just a bunch of people waiting for you. Are you so confused about your own status? Shenjian raised his eyebrows. This protagonist has become more and more active since he recognized his relatives and returned. I heard from people below that in the past few days, the true Buddha not only took away the supernatural resources that were promoted to ghosts and gods, but also took some more and gave them to the ghosts of the Lin family and the Wang family, which attracted a lot of praise. This kind of behavior is undoubtedly seeking death. The reason why the fake Buddha gave a large amount of supernatural resources in the first place was in the form of betrothal gifts. The subsequent resources were also paid by the fake Buddhist himself and had nothing to do with the real Buddhist temple. The true Buddha disciples directly used the resources of the true Buddha temple to give to outsiders as favors, and turned their elbows outward. The reason why they were not taken down by the discipline hall was simply that they had just come back from acknowledging their relatives and were in the limelight, plus the entrances of various halls and the ghost Buddha mother's attitude was not obvious, so she turned a blind eye. He estimated that the current attitude of ghost Buddha mother towards this biological son was not as good as before. It just depends on when the protagonist plays with fire and burns himself. Think of this. A trace of amusement flashed in Shenjian's eyes. If he didn't have more important things to do now, he would really want to play with the other person and have fun. Thinking. Shenjian ignored the provocation of the true Buddha. Just walk over. The true Buddha stopped him sideways and continued to provoke, can't you understand what people are saying? My mother said that no one else is allowed to enter. This is an internal discussion of the true Buddha temple. Do you want to eavesdrop? The protagonist bites the word my mother very hard. That's enough, let your brother come in. At this time, the scolding voice of the ghost Buddha mother came. The tone was full of disappointment and exhaustion. The face of the true Buddha changed. Mother, didn't you say that the Buddha was not high enough to participate in this matter? Why can he go in? Hear this. Shen Jian understood. No wonder he stayed outside. Daking is that Gui Buddha mother feels that the protagonist is not qualified and won't let him in. But the protagonist refuses to give up, with a warm face and a cold face, and he even calls it, help guard. He can. The ghost Buddha mother didn't say much, just 3 words. Only. These 3 words fell in the ears of the true Buddha, but they were like a thunderbolt from the blue, making his face become more and more ugly, turning green and white at one time. He's not high enough to get in, but the impostor can? It is obvious that he is the real son of Buddha and the mother's biological son, but in the mother's heart, the status of the counterfeit is far higher than that of him. This gap made him unable to accept it for a while. I just felt like my heart was shrouded in a haze. The back molars are completely clenched. Hateful appearance. Just in time. The true Buddhist disciple suddenly caught a glimpse of Shen Jian, who was standing beside him, and seemed to turn around and glance at him, his eyes full of sarcastic ridicule. It seems to be saying, "Go back to Gotham, Batman said he won't hit you." This made him angrier. At this time, another voice sounded. It was the ghost abbot of the discipline hall. Let the second Buddhist disciple come in too. I heard that the second Buddhist disciple will also be promoted to ghost and god. Although it is a little early, but after all, they are all Buddhist disciples, so it won't be a problem to hear it. Hear the words. A true Buddhist is overjoyed. He glanced at Shen Jian with some pride and snorted. My inner fondness for the discipline hall has greatly increased, and my complaints against my mother have deepened. Look at what other people say, they are all Buddhists. Why should you treat me differently? Just because you raised that fake person from a young age, you treat me, your biological son. Treat them differently, right? Shen Jian glanced at the protagonist with pity. Couldn't this fool realize that the abbot of the discipline hall was giving him eye drops? The ghost Buddha mother has clearly refused to let him in, and it is not because of selfish motives, but because she is really not qualified and does not comply with the rules. However, the discipline hall is acting as a good person and applying eye drops to make the protagonist feel that his mother is protecting him. Not as good as outsiders, whose face is the slap in the face. Ghost Buddha mother. Regardless of whether she refuses or accepts, she is in a dilemma. But it has nothing to do with him. He wished that the mother and son were more separated, otherwise it would be difficult for him to capture his heart. Everyone come in. For a long time. The ghostly Buddha's voice came with a cold tone. The true Buddha walked in without hesitation. Shen Jian also followed. Inside the Buddhist hall, the ghost Buddha mother sits on the green lotus platform, her brows full of gloom, like a guanyin worried about trivial matters. There is an abbot sitting on each of the 5 futons. They have different forms, but the only thing they have in common is that they are infinitely close to the terrifying level of world-destroying ghosts and gods. Just entered the venue. A true Buddha's breath is suffocated. He is just the top ghost king. Although he is infinitely close to the level of ghosts and gods, he is not a real ghost and god after all. Even if he faces 6 ghosts and gods at the same time, his body will instinctively start to be vigilant, let alone the existence of 6 ghosts and gods that are infinitely close to the world-destroying level. His body instinctively reacted to want to escape. His face turned even paler. On the other hand, Shen Jian was in a leisurely mood. His expression had not changed for a moment, and he still looked calm and calm. After all, in terms of terror level, the fake Buddha was no worse than the 6 people present. This was the real reason why even if the other party had been a licker for 5 years and made such a big fuss, no official from the Genfo temple would be involved. Soon, the discussion continued. The true Buddhist disciples didn't know why and could only listen blankly. Shen Jian, on the other hand, raised his eyebrows. Got interested. Because the ghost Buddha mother and the others were discussing matters concerning the Pyramid Kingdom. It can be heard from the description that the reason why the coup occurred in the Pyramid Kingdom, and the reason why the temple's high priest and the previous pharaoh, Cleopatra's biological brother, dared to rebel, was because the true Buddha temple was behind all this. It was the Genpho temple that supported the new pharaoh's ascension and wanted to completely take over this 7-star supernatural land, which was why those movements were made. But they didn't expect that Cleopatra would return after disappearing. Returning the pharaoh's throne meant that everything they had done was in vain, and because of this, they chose to bury Cleopatra. Everything that happened after that. Just as Jana described, the noble slave owners who once supported Cleopatra launched a riot in an attempt to rescue Cleopatra and regain the dominance of this country. At the moment, what the true Buddha temple is currently discussing is how to suppress the noble slave owners who support Cleopatra and completely control the pyramid civilization in the hands of the Buddha. Think about it. Shen Jian stood up and said, "I'll go." As soon as these words came out, everyone's eyes turned over, including the ghost Buddha mother. What is this child thinking? Doesn't he know that this trip is dangerous? Shen Jian blinked. He looked at the ghost Buddha mother and said softly, "Did mother plan this incident?" Yes, the previous pharaoh was a stubborn person. He would rather die than surrender. Although he was just a ghost, with his special supernatural ability, he could transform into 7. Even if he faced 3 abbots who were infinitely close to the world-destroying level at the same time, he would not be at a disadvantage. Let the Buddha kingdom had a headache. Then she disappeared for unknown reasons. No one knew how she disappeared, but it was a good opportunity for us. But we didn't expect that she would come back again. God didn't want it to happen. Shen Jian. The corner of his mouth twitched slightly. Come on. The return of Cleopatra is entirely due to him. The other party was forcibly sent to the human world by a horror game and could not return. If he had not become the city lord of Nanjiang district and could open the door to the deep ghost realm at any time, Cleopatra would probably still be playing with sand in the human world. Thinking. Shen Jian retracted his thoughts. He smiled and said, "Since this is a problem that has troubled my mother so far, I naturally want to get rid of these worries for my mother. I hope my mother will not refuse. I have made up my mind on this matter." Although they were discussing, Shen Jian's tone was full of no doubt. A posture of even if you don't agree, I can go secretly. The ghost Buddha mother listened. The innocent and bright eyes are full of soft colors. Even though Shen Jian seemed to be acting arbitrarily, in fact he didn't want to share her troubles. How could she be really angry at Shen Jian's tone? This kid is much more mature than before, and he knows how to be considerate compared with him, the other one. Hey. A faint sigh emerged in his heart. The ghost Buddha mother nodded and said, "Since you have this intention, I won't stop you, but remember, don't force it. Your safety is far more important than a 7-star supernatural place. If something happens to you, it will be considered a stepping stone. Flattening the pyramid country cannot make up for it." The words just fell. The true Buddha rolled his eyes. He also stood up and said firmly, "I will go too. I am also a Buddhist and want to contribute my share." Nonsense. The ghost Buddha mother immediately objected. The other 5 abbots also looked strange. Although this determination is good, you don't even look at the gap between you and the first Buddha. This competition for favor is too obvious. Failed. It gives people a sense of déjà vu that they want to express themselves but are unable to do so. See this. The true Buddha became even more angry. He came in wanting to perform. It's not for the sake of becoming a green leaf and making that fake one even better. Why doesn't this damn guy die early? As long as he is around, my mother's eyes will always be on him, and will not stay on me for a moment. Such differential treatment once made him lose control. Extremely annoyed? No, he had to think of a way. Something strange is coming? Fortunately, I am the king of hell of the 10th palace. Author, Shi Buletin Chigwa. Chapter 971. Finally, the true Buddhist disciple's name still appeared on the travel list. It is said that after the meeting, the abbot of the discipline hall met with the second Buddhist disciple. The two people did not know what they discussed, but the result was that the discipline hall overcame all difficulties and fully supported the true Buddhist disciple in going to the Pyramid Kingdom. When the other abbots saw this, they didn't think it was a big deal and they all came out to watch the farce. I want to see where the second Buddha got the capital to dare to compete for this dangerous task. As for whether he will die, no one is worried about that. Here in Luo Fengtian, no ghost dares to die to offend the true Buddha temple. Even if it is a wild supernatural place that is not included in the boundaries of the Buddhist kingdom, it may dare to disobey the Buddhist kingdom and not submit to the true Buddha temple, but it will never dare to kill a Buddha. Son. Certainly. Whether it will be a disaster or not is not certain. Even if the 7-star supernatural land were placed in the Buddhist kingdom, it would still be one of the best. Even the Buddhist kingdom would not dare to be careless. In the entire Buddhist kingdom, there are only 3 supernatural places with 7 stars or above. As for the 8 stars, no. It can be imagined how valuable the pyramid country is. Even if you are not a Buddhist, it is not a strange thing. And it is said that on that day, the ghost Buddha mother lost her temper. The voices scolding the true Buddhist disciples could be heard even outside the temple. A terrible supernatural threat swept over most of the mountain tops, and even the temperature dropped to freezing point. Within a radius of 5 kilometers, no ghost dared to approach. However, even so, a true Buddhist still insists on going his own way. And yelled words such as "My biological mother doesn't believe him at all, she only believes in that fake." For all this, Shen Jian knows it. Wrong. It should be said that he saw it all with his own eyes. Because he happened to be at the scene at that time. Responsible for arching fire. Calm down, my brother is just immature and prefers to act on his own initiative. He does this just to get more limelight and make you pay attention to him. In fact, I can give him all the credit for this trip to the Pyramid Kingdom. In this case, my brother's reputation can surpass everyone else. Shen Jian squeezed Gui Buddha mother's shoulders and said in a pretentious manner. There is an attitude of the elder brother is willing to wrong himself for the sake of his younger brother. Showing the essence of the White Lotus. Who can resist a wonderful son who loves to blow the pillow? No, what's yours is yours. If you're willing to be wronged, he won't appreciate it. He'll just think you're laughing at him. He can go wherever he wants. If he's in trouble, he'll naturally know what restraint is. The ghost Buddha mother was still furious, but under Shen Jian's superb massage techniques, her expression gradually relaxed. Then she turned sideways and caressed Shen Jian's face, full of heartache. Hey, you kid, you don't have to be so sensible. It's him, it's you are always my son, and no one can change it. Shen Jian held the jade hand caressing his face with his backhand, blinked, and said with a hint of meaning, this is what I should do. I said that I want to find a woman who is exactly like my mother in the future. I am now in advance to please my mother. It will be easier to get along with my wife in the future. Hear the words. A flash of morning glow quickly flashed across the eyes of ghost Buddha mother. Shen Jian rolled his eyes somewhat angrily. This statement sounds quite ambiguous. If you can't hear clearly or react slowly, Bao Buqi will think more about it and think of this sentence as please your mother now, and your mother will become your wife in the future. This kid is saying such unrealistic things again. I don't know if he knows what he is doing, but I don't want to ask too deeply about this kind of thing. Listen to your heart. Shen Jian continued, Mom, after I come back from my mission to the Pyramid Kingdom, can I ask you for a reward? What reward? The ghost Buddha mother was stunned, looking at Shen Jian who was asking for rewards like a child. The smile in her eyes became gentler, exuding the brilliance of motherhood, which was pleasing to the eye. Now that I've said it, it won't be called a reward. I also need time to prepare, right? This reward doesn't cost money. Mother can do it at any time. Shen Jian left a hook. Means unknown. It makes people unable to help but think wildly. In particular, the ghost Buddha mother more or less knew that the son in front of her had failed emotionally, so she pinned this emotion on her. This sentence "I can do it at any time" really made her thoughts a little confused. I don't know what I thought of. The earlobes feel a little hot. But then I thought about it. How could her son have such thoughts about her? She must be overthinking it. Immediately, Ghost Buddha mother smiled and said, "Okay, I agree." At the same time, outer city. The fake smiling man with the ID Tianlong urgently recalled the players. The space was blocked again to prevent the information from leaking. Subsequently, Tianlong had a calm face and said solemnly, "There is a big problem. According to the news from the Lin family and the Wang family, the true Buddhist disciple has left for the Pyramid Kingdom." Hear the words. All the players were stunned. Some players asked, "Pyramid Kingdom? Is it also a plot point?" Tianlong nodded, then shook his head, "It's an important plot, but it's too early. According to what I know in my last 2 lives, the Pyramid Kingdom is a plot point in the middle and later stages. At that time, the true Buddha had already become famous. The fake Buddha was so overwhelmed that he couldn't breathe, so the fake Buddha planned to kill the real Buddha during his trip to the Pyramid Country. In the end, he stole the chicken but lost the rice. The real Buddha got the evidence of murder and deprived the fake Buddha. The name of the Buddha. But now, the plot has advanced by more than a year or 2. The true Buddha has not even advanced to the level of ghosts and gods. And the Pyramid Kingdom is a super-standard 7-star supernatural place with a quasi-8 stars. The ghosts and gods may be trapped in it. What the hell? What happened to the true Buddha temple? Why would the true Buddha think of going to the mid-to-late plot dungeon now? To the end. There was a bit more grit in his tone. It was obvious that the plot had begun to develop in a good direction, but within a few days, this chaotic sense of déjà vu came again. He really didn't understand what went wrong in this 100th reincarnation. It is unlikely that it is related to the 100th player. After all, he never mentioned from beginning to end that the Pyramid Kingdom was related to the true Buddha. What should we do? I'm going to a quasi-8-star supernatural land. Is it so crazy? Are we going to go too? Don't be kidding. Yes, this is no joke. In the Buddhist kingdom, we have the compensation reward of the horror game. We can easily disguise ourselves as temple monks and not get into trouble easily. But that may not happen in other places. It is a quasi-8-star supernatural place. I'm afraid we'll die on the outside before we even reach it. The expressions of the players changed. All are unwilling to go. This is not a question of whether you are afraid of death, but that there is no way to survive at all. Not to mention how they can survive in the Pyramid Country and provide help to the true Buddhist disciples without the blessing of compensation and rewards. During the long journey, they will collectively die in the suburbs. This is not an exaggeration, but fact. They have not forgotten that this is a 9-star dungeon. They are within the scope of the Buddha kingdom. They have the blessing of compensation rewards and the difficulty has plummeted. However, if they leave the safe zone arranged by the thriller game, the true sinister aspects of the 9-star dungeon will be completely revealed. They, a group of humans at the lowest level of the food chain, had no chance of walking past. Even if they miss this opportunity, they are not willing to go. Tianlong. He also fell silent. Because he also didn't dare. The reason why he dared to go in the first 2 lives was because he joined the true Buddha's lineup and gained the other party's trust. In addition, the true Buddha at that time already had the strength to compete with ghosts and gods that were infinitely close to destroying the world, So he felt relieved. Go to. In this life, the true Buddha is the top ghost king, and he has not gained the trust of the other party. Once he follows, he is afraid that the true Buddha will abandon him and leave in times of crisis. At this time, the taciturn Tianyang spoke. Let's form an alliance with that group of Western players, share the news on the chat interface, and let them replace us to help the true Buddha complete this round of plot. After all, their mission is the same as ours. As soon as these words came out, the players were shocked. It's not that I think there's anything wrong with this proposal, but, what if the news leaks out? This is the key. They have not forgotten that the 100th player who has never appeared has a 98% probability of joining the fake Buddha lineup. Once the plot content is shared, the fake Buddha will also react. And they have already experienced the consequences of doing so. Completely hopeless. Without the advantage of foresight, the fake Buddha is simply a crushing existence, and the protagonist has no chance of winning. Tianyang said strangely, "You are wrong. The key to the plot this time is not confrontation. The real and fake Buddhists are in the same group. Moreover, during this period, the status of the fake Buddhists is much higher than that of the protagonist, unless he is crazy. Only then would we want to kill the protagonist. In this case, we only need to let the true Buddha take some of the credit and come back to pay for it. Don't forget, the plot of the Pyramid Kingdom cannot be solved by two Buddhist disciples. This time, there is a high probability that they will just be the vanguard. The second trip is the key." This last paragraph is for Tianlong. Tianlong suddenly woke up. Suddenly see the light. Yes. He was just stunned. Always use the judgment of the subsequent plot in the early stage, and use it on this plot that is completely different from the previous reincarnations. This idea was wrong from the start. And this operation also happened in previous reincarnations, but the people traveling there were not just two Buddhist disciples. According to the subsequent plot, this trip did not go smoothly. Most of the people on the trip died, and only a few came back. This led to the follow-up of the protagonist going to the Pyramid Kingdom. Look at it this way. He really doesn't have to worry about fake Buddhists taking action in advance. And without the unexpected factor of fake Buddha, he doesn't have to worry about how to prevent the news from leaking. He only needs to give enough plot content to let the protagonist get a share of the pie. It is not difficult. The more I think about it, his thinking becomes clearer. Inspiration keeps pouring out like diarrhea. In this operation, he must make sure that the protagonist gets the credit that is not lost to the fake Buddhist disciples. End of chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Something strange is coming? Fortunately, I am the king of hell of the 10th palace. Author, Shiyu Buletin Chigwa. Chapter 972. The Other Side. Out of the Buddhist hall. Shen Jian was in a happy mood. He knew that bringing back the true Buddha was the right choice. If it wasn't for the protagonist, how could he let the ghost Buddha mother know how good he was? People are afraid of comparison. Same goes for ghosts. Some actions that are originally very normal, if there is another person who pulls the crotch as a foil, the height will quickly rise to the level of excellence. At the moment, the willful behavior of a true Buddhist is the best backdrop. The greater the trouble the other party causes, the greater the gap will be revealed when he solves it. In addition, there is no one to control the situation in the Lin family, and something will happen sooner or later. Even if it offends a 7-star supernatural place, the Lin family may not be able to do it. By then, he waited for Lin Yangzi, the girl in the red dress, to come for help. Think of this. Shen Jiangxin's mood fluctuated. At this time, the scarlet panel emerged. The hidden plot mission has been triggered. It has been detected that the player has modified the main mission by himself, and the current hidden plot mission has changed. Hidden plot mission, modified: suppress the riots in the Pyramid Kingdom. Content: as the ultimate villain of reincarnation in this world, the main character is a person who has his own way. Players can choose one of them, or set up their own business, actively join the riot team, and quell the unrest. Task conditions: the Pharaoh's position is stable and there will no longer be a confrontation involving more than 100 people. Note: the current hidden plot mission is an important branch of the mainline mission. Get full credit and add 25% mission progress. Note: choosing a lineup can effectively intervene in the Pyramid Imperial rule. Note: it is detected that the player is being followed by Luo Fengtian's authority, and the plot accounted for 50%. The random encounter effect has been triggered. Every time you visit a high-level supernatural place, you will receive a random encounter. Looking at the task panel, Shen Jian was amazed. The copy of Cleopatra actually occupies 25% of the share in this reincarnation, which is directly a quarter. This proves that the Pyramid Kingdom is of great help to the protagonist. It is so big that it even exceeds the ghost town, and the ghost relics help the protagonist. Shen Jian was thoughtful. Cleopatra is also one of the heroines. Or are there other choices for heroines in the Pyramid Kingdom? Certainly. Being able to occupy 25% of the plot is definitely not something that a female protagonist can explain. He estimated that part of the authority of the Pyramid Kingdom may be in the hands of the protagonist and is the more important team of the protagonist. Only in this way can she occupy the entire plot. Quarter. Just thinking about it? Messages on the chat interface also sounded one after another. Shen Jian glanced away. Not Jana, but Kingdom. King Quan: sir, are you planning to go to the Pyramid Kingdom? King Yama: well, all the players already know. Wang Quan: of course. Tianlong placed some players in the Wang family and the Lin family. Whenever the fake Buddha makes any move, they are the quickest to know about it. They have even discussed the plan. King Yama: come and listen. King Quan: actually, it's nothing, because in this vanguard operation, you and the true Buddha are on the same team, and the location of the Pyramid Kingdom has exceeded the safe area defined by the thriller game, so the players do not intend to rush back, and it was the Western players who came to remotely command, allowing those foreigners to help the protagonist seize the credit. King Quan: originally Tianlong chose to cooperate with the first player in the horror game Lord of Heaven, but for some reason, the other party did not enter the dungeon, so they turned their target to the Western 12 seats. Jason shared some of the beneficial information with this person, and the rest of the public information will be posted directly on the chat interface. King Quan: oh, by the way, sir, according to the plot, the results of this vanguard operation were not very good. The vanguard army lost more than 70% before returning to the Buddha Kingdom. This led to the follow-up of the protagonist going to the Pyramid Kingdom. I guess the person in power or someone in power in this pyramid country is hostile to the Buddhist country, and exposing his identity may lead to unnecessary attacks. Wang Quan combined his own speculations and recounted the information he heard from Tianlong in great detail. Finished reading. Shen Jian looked slightly frowned. It wasn't because something happened to the pioneer army, but because they saw an unexpected game ID. Lord of Heaven. This game ID belongs to the first person in horror games. He is the first player in the world to be recruited into the horror game and has survived from the earliest days of supernatural resurrection to the present. The game level is up to level 68. It is an existence that all players and ghost masters can't match. Even the royal power of the number one person in the Dragon Kingdom seems a bit immature in front of the other party. And the first person in the horror game is extremely courageous. Not long ago, the Western Holy See launched the 12 Gods project and successfully created a real angel and ghost, the Archangel Gabriel. More importantly, the other party is very ambitious and full of courage. Using Archangel Gabriel as a bait, he built plank roads openly and secretly infiltrated Chenkang, preparing to use a 2,000-ton supernatural nuclear weapon to nuke the entire city of Dachuan, destroying him along with him under the power of the nuclear bomb. It can be said, the plan was perfect. If any other city god from the underworld came here except him, the result of that day would be the death of the city god, the destruction of Dachuan city, thousands of evil spirits disappearing into thin air, and the aftermath of the nuclear explosion would also spread to the underworld. In other areas under his jurisdiction, even if the city god and Yinzei of another city fall, it would not be a bad idea. In other words, that time, the underworld almost lost 2 city gods and more than 4,000 Yin servants, and months of hard work were in vain. This is unacceptable to Shenjian. One can imagine. How crazy is the first person in this horror game? Unfortunately, the other party seemed to have sensed the danger in advance and had already escaped to the horror world before he blocked Western players from entering the horror world. Now, even mandatory invitations from global 9-star players can be rejected. Shenjian's eyes showed a bit of surprise. It is not something that players can do to refuse the mandatory invitation of a thriller game. He didn't know if there was anything special about the first sequence one player invited by the thriller game, but he knew that the other player must have some kind of authority. Only thriller game permissions can refuse mandatory invitations from thriller games. Think of this. Shenjian's eyes became darker. I originally thought about killing the opponent with the help of this 9-star copy, but I didn't expect that he was not there. Was it noticed in advance? Or simply don't want to wade into muddy waters? This answer will be known after he completely recovers the 4th Luo Fengtian and clears the dungeon. Suppress your thoughts. Shenjian returned his gaze to the chat interface. King Yama, I understand. Learn all this. Shenjian immediately chose to set off. The true Buddha was already one step ahead of him and set off with several members of the discipline hall. Although he was not in a hurry, it was time to set off. He can't really let the principal princess come back after being captured. Although in his eyes, death is new life, but at the moment, he still needs the other party to help him stabilize the situation in the West. Can't die. Soon. Shenjian was at the foot of Zhenfo Temple and saw Wang Quan waiting outside. He seemed to be planning to go with him. Seemingly seeing the confusion in Shenjian's eyes, Wang Quan twitched the corner of his mouth slightly. Sir, Thriller Game seems to regard me as yours. My main mission has been changed to assist you in becoming the Lord of the Buddha Kingdom, so. Hear the words. Shenjian's eyes were strange. Look up and down. It seems to be saying, is the difficulty of current assistance already so low? Who among us helps whom? King Quan. His old face turned red. I also feel that the word assistance is a bit hot on the tongue. But he had no choice but to do this in a thriller game. I can only follow shamelessly. At the same time, he said seriously, Sir, I am actually useful. Needless to say, I provide information. I also have another role, which you definitely need. I can pretend, no, I am the bait. If you want to catch someone, pushing me out is the best way. Like in the ghost town, the mirror ghost cannot invade you at all and will not show up. At this time, my role is reflected. Sir, please think about it. I am close to the level of the Abyss level Ghost King. Not to mention the lowest level in the Pyramid Country, but I am also the type who will be bullied when I walk on the road. If I expose my human aura again, no matter who you want to catch, it's all a simple thing. To the end. There was even a hint of pride on Wang Quan's face. The back is straightened a lot. Shenjian. Being a guinea pig is addictive, right? This hobby of yours is quite good. Okay, I'll help you later. Shenjian patted his shoulder. Very satisfied. Not long after. Encapsulated by Shenjian's ghost realm, the two soon came to a desolate area that was completely different from the prosperity of the Buddhist kingdom. Look around. It's all yellow sand. Flying sand and rocks, yellow sand all over the sky. Sand pits of all sizes were filled with buried bones. Wang Quan's sharp eyes saw that these bones were not complete at all. The flesh and blood had been chewed, and even the skeleton was missing a lot. The traces of chewing were clearly visible. And these mutilated bones still exude the supernatural fluctuations belonging to the top ghost kings, which shows that they just died not long ago. This unknown ghost buried under the yellow sand is not only a very scary person, but also a guy who likes to take advantage of the heat. Maybe there are also unknown supernatural traps set up. Not to mention being a ghost master, even a real ghost, even if it is a little bit minor, will be buried in this burial ground. Sir, how are we going to get there? Tianlong, they didn't say how to cross this desert. Wang Quan asked. Hear this. Shen Jian's lips curled up. His eyes suddenly fell on Wang Quan. I don't know how to get there, but there are guides everywhere in this vast desert. Just seduce one of them. By the way, remember to expose your human aura. It's faster. It's not easy to attract a few enchanting bitches with your beauty. King Quan. Listening to these words, I always felt that something was wrong. I only sell my art, not my body. Something strange is coming? Fortunately, I am the king of hell of the 10th palace. Author, Shi Yu Buletin Chi Gua. Chapter 973. After listening to what Shen Jian said and looking at the endless barren desert, Wang Quan's eyelids jumped. Although what he just said was not a joke, and he was indeed prepared to be a guinea pig, I didn't expect that you would use me so quickly. But King Quan did not hesitate for long. After a few seconds, he gritted his teeth. He ran directly into the desert. See this. Shen Jian followed leisurely. In his mind, he recalled some of the information about the Pyramid Kingdom that the Ghost Buddha Mother told him. The first thing to worry about is how to enter this place. The desolate desert is boundless and has no end. It is a naturally formed super-large supernatural environment. Once you step into it, without the corresponding coordinates and a guide who is familiar with the path to lead the way, you will inevitably get lost in it and become a part of the sky full of corpses. Member. The so-called guides are fierce ghosts who live in the desolate desert all year round. It is a combination of camel and sand people. But these desert ghosts do not easily help people lead the way. What they prefer to do is to use intimidation to force the survivors who break into the desert to run around and get completely lost in the desert. And they looked on in amusement. Until the passenger was exhausted and watched his body being chewed away. Therefore, this group of desert ghosts is also known as the Desert Death. It is the first natural danger to enter the pyramid country. The safest way to enter is actually to let the noble slave owners of the pyramid country come out to greet them and guide them throughout the process. However, the pyramid country is currently falling into unprecedented riots. The Genfo temple could not even contact the field staff stationed at the pyramid, and there was no response even through the use of supernatural media. This resulted in a scene where the two Buddhist disciples went out, but no one greeted them. Just thinking about it? 100 meters ahead, there was sudden movement. At the same time, King Quan is still running, getting faster and faster. He looked as if he was about to abandon Shen Jian. He wanted to stop. But he found that his feet didn't obey his orders at all. It felt like some invisible dirty thing had taken over his feet and led him into an even more desolate desert area. And he couldn't resist at all. King Quan was shocked. I felt like I was sweating all over my spine. This 9-star copy is really evil. He didn't even know when he was attacked. And this is not the first time this has happened. When he was in the ghost town, he was targeted by ghosts twice without realizing it. This is the third time. In other words, This ghost is most likely to be at the level of a ghost. Even if they are not, they are still the most terrifying group of top ghost kings. Otherwise, it would be impossible to exert a supernatural influence on him without his knowledge. He glanced away. Really? To his left, he saw a haggard Sandman ghost with only a rag covering his crotch, staring at him in a gloomy manner, only one step behind him. As if she had been standing next to him for a long time, but he had never noticed it. Hey, human. This is really rare. I've only heard of it. This is the first time I've seen a human species. I'm glad to see you. There was a full ferocious smile in the eyes of the Sand People ghost. It's like looking at a prey. Only after the prey is tired can it be slaughtered. King Quan. His expression hardened. His pupils looked steadily to the left. Not because I saw a ghost. Instead, I saw a scene that was rarer than a ghost. To the left of the Sand People ghost, Shen Jian ran over at some point, holding a large speaker with amplification in his hand. On the loudspeaker, the mouth of a head had been opened wide, and it was close to the ears of the Sand People ghost. Sighed. How happy are you? A deafening sound suddenly rang out. It resounded throughout a 10-mile radius. The sound is like thunder, which can make people's eardrums burst. Sandman ghost. He was confused. I just feel like my head is blank. He even forgot what he was here to do. Until a long time. His consciousness suddenly returned. He looked blankly to the left. He saw a loudspeaker bigger than his head, punching his face. At the end of the loudspeaker, a man smiled and waved. He was clearly dressed as a monk, but his wrists were decorated with blood-stained hemp ropes that were obviously inconsistent with his identity. He was clearly smiling, but his smile was so weird. What a fate. The night starts so early. It's rare to see such a canon like you. I'm a running friend. Let's get to know each other. The corner of the Sandman ghost's mouth twitched. No. Where did you come from? Besides, when you talk to people, do you always use a loudspeaker to slap people in the face? If it weren't for ghosts and gods, my special voice would have sent me away directly with just that voice you just made. Making friends is a bit of a waste. Think of this. The Sand People ghost couldn't help but move a few steps towards the royal power. Nothing else. This man is so weird. This was obviously his home court, but he didn't notice any trace of the other party. Especially the loudspeaker was so loud that he still didn't notice any movement. This is very wrong. This man is not a good person at first glance, so it is best to stay away from him. Etc. Suddenly, the Sandman ghost seemed to have thought of something. His eyes suddenly fell on Wang Quan's face, and he saw that this frail human being had no other emotions except the shock that could not be concealed on his face when he first noticed his presence. It's like, not afraid of him at all. Combined with this strange monk who suddenly appeared. For a while, the faces of the Sand People turned green. Gan. This is a humming trap. He said, how could a rare human appear in such a beautiful desert area? I bet this was someone else's bait. And he was the fish that was caught. The more I think about it, the expression of the Sandman ghost became more and more ugly. No hesitation. He directly increased his speed and threw away the two people behind him. However, just after he used all his strength and ran for more than 10 kilometers, he turned around and found that the strange man appeared on his left again, his smile still warm. It's like he never left at all. Sandfolk ghost. Damn it. Damn it. This familiar rush, it turned out that from the victim's perspective, I was so frightened. He wanted to cry but had no tears. I don't know why I was targeted by this man. Can't even shake it off. As if he knew what the Sand Mingi was thinking, Shen Jian's smile became more kind. Ha ha ha, runner, you don't have to be afraid. I'm not a bad person. I just feel that you and I are somewhat destined. Why don't we stop and have a chat? Let's enhance our relationship. The other party's tone was sincere and his expression was serious. From the attitude alone, it was impossible to fault him at all. But this is a desert where no one can be found. And which bad person would admit that he is a bad person? If I stop, a few big men will appear in the next second and surround me. The Sandman Ghost felt more and more that stopping was a bad idea. So disrespectful. Seeing that the other party had no intention of stopping and instead accelerated his speed, Shen Jian lost all intention of communicating in a friendly manner and stretched out his foot to stumble. Boom! The Sandman Ghost didn't notice for a moment and rolled several meters directly. A gust of sand blew up. When he got up again, he saw Shen Jian looking at him condescendingly, with one foot on his face, his eyes cold and dark. I'm giving you some face. I heard that you were sent here during Cleopatra's time, so I planned to give you some face. I didn't expect you wouldn't accept it. Sandman Ghost? He was slightly startled. Subconsciously, I belong to the royal party. That woman intends to subvert the existing beautiful situation. She has already been buried in the pyramid tomb and will die soon. Shen Jian narrowed his eyes. There was silence for a moment. Then he took out a black steel rod from his body. He slowly lifted it up. Sandman Ghost. He hurriedly said, brother, the royalist party has no future. I am forced to have no choice. If you want to help that woman, I advise you to give up this idea as soon as possible. This is for your own good. I can introduce you to join royal party. He saw it. Shen Jian met Cleopatra, the last pharaoh. And judging from the current situation, the other party has come all the way here, and it doesn't look like they are here to play. In other words, they are here to provide assistance to the royalists. In this situation, advising the opponent to change their lineup is the best way to save their lives. Shen Jian looked strange. The corners of his mouth curled up. Who told you that I am a royalist? Why can't I be an insurgent? Princes, generals, and ministers would rather have their own kind. Don't you understand this principle? As soon as these words came out, the Sandfolk Ghost was completely stunned. Uprising. Are you planning to rebel? Grass. What you think is beautiful. The most basic reason why the royal party, that is, the younger brother of the previous pharaoh came to power is that the pharaoh disappeared, and the pyramid country was leaderless. The country could not live without a king for a day, so the various parties chose to turn a blind eye and allowed it. The new pharaoh is on the throne. Because of this, after the return of the previous pharaoh, the new pharaoh and the high priest of the temple desperately buried each other in the pyramid tomb, triggering riots that swept the entire pyramid civilization. Just like this, the situation is already chaotic. Do you still want civilians to rebel? Are you crazy or am I crazy? Or has the world gone crazy? Whenever I drink a little wine, I don't dare to have such unrealistic thoughts. Then the Sandman Ghost opened his mouth and wanted to say something, but in the end he couldn't say a word. Apparently, he had never thought of this possibility. In other words, I can't even imagine that a commoner still has the ambition to compete with others. It's really a knife in the ass and an eye-opener. So, what are you looking for me for? Sandman Ghost said cautiously. My heart was full of confusion. He is just a little ghost. His status in the pyramid country is not high. After all, if he had a high status, how could he be sent to this desolate desert? It was said that he was sent here to patrol the territory and protect the people, but in fact he was just a stinky security guard watching the gate. If you want to build a great cause, you need a group of like-minded partners. I think you are very suitable. In the future, I will definitely have you as a general and marquis. Shen Jian stepped on his face and said with a smile. Uh, how many people do we have right now? Shen Jian thought for a while. Pointed. Including you, there are 3 now. King Quan. Sandfolk Ghost. Gan. You might as well kill me now. End of chapter. Something strange is coming? Fortunately, I am the king of hell of the 10th palace. Author, Shi Yu Buletin Chi Gua. Chapter 974. Under the sky full of yellow sand. The ghosts of the sand people were leading the way with tears in their eyes. Behind. It was Shen Jian who looked calm and Wan Quan who looked in awe. Brother, what you said must be bluffing, right? What do you like about me? Can't I change it? He is still trying to save himself. Pray with heartfelt words. Rebellion has no future. Joining the royal party is a wise choice. Shen Jian glanced at him and said without saltiness, I value your survival. Then I will change. Sandman Ghost was about to speak subconsciously, but the moment he blurted out his words, he realized that he had changed his mind. This man was determined to tie him to this pirate ship. He only gave up after watching the boat roll over and be submerged. He had to suffer several lifetimes of bad luck before he could meet such a madman. The more I think about it, he was even more sad and angry, as if he had seen himself being led to the guillotine and beheaded in public under the rotten eggs of thousands of people. Brother, why are you so stubborn? Let me tell you another secret information. You may not know that behind the royal party's lineage is actually the Genfo temple of the Buddha kingdom. Otherwise, just a high priest of the temple, and how can a prince without any real power convince everyone to turn a blind eye? Behind this, the true Buddha temple is behind the scenes. Brother, you look like a monk, so you probably don't know about the true Buddha temple. It is the only dominant supernatural place in the deep ghost realm. If it weren't for the ghost Bodhisattva and the Lord of the Buddha kingdom over there, who could not escape from the world, the pyramid kingdom would I can't even struggle. The sand folk ghosts were filled with awe. Even though he is from the pyramid kingdom and is a famous ghost and god, his back still bends down in front of the 3 words true Buddha temple. That is the intimidation brought by invincibility. Why? Bridge Beansack. Thoughts are bursting. The Sandman Ghost thought of something again. He stared at Shen Jian's appearance as a monk, and thought of Shen Jian's terrifying ability to crush one of his ghosts and gods. This was not something that ordinary monks could do. He remembered that Genfo temple also had status divisions. The lowest level are undoubtedly the ghost monks and ghost nuns in major temples in the Buddhist kingdom. Then there are the ghost monks who are affiliated with the true Buddha temple. Next is the ghost Vajra, the ghost protector. The lowest threshold is also the top ghost king, and most of them are ghosts and gods. But a ghost protector of this level is obviously unable to crush him. Then, further up, there is the ghost abbot at the level of Wudatangkao. These ghost abbots are all existences that are infinitely close to the world-destroying ghosts and gods. Under normal circumstances, they can crush a ghost and god. But the ghost abbot at Wudatangkao doesn't look like this either. He's not blind. And besides the ghost abbot, who else in the true Buddha temple can have the power to be infinitely close to the world-destroying ghosts and gods? The answer is, Buddha. The Buddhist disciples of Genfo temple have terrifying levels that are infinitely close to world-destroying ghosts and gods. Think of this. The Sandman Ghost's pupils shrank. He glanced at Shen Jian with a stiff expression. Are you a Buddhist? Shen Jian nodded. He gave the other person a you're not stupid yet look. Sandfolk Ghost. He was even more confused. Are you really a Buddhist? Then you rebelled against an egg. Isn't the royal party the one you support? What, you want to rebel? Otherwise, what is the purpose of rebellion? What exactly do you want to do? The royal party now has the advantage. As long as the noble slave owners of the royalist party are eliminated, they can regain control of the pyramid civilization, and the Genfo temple can also obtain a surrendered subject country. Hello, that's fine, why do you want to rebel? Sandman Ghost asked. Nothing else. He really didn't understand what Shenjian was thinking in his brain. To this, Shenjian said calmly, those are those who surrendered to the Buddhist kingdom, not mine. As soon as these words came out, not only the Sand Folk Ghost, but also Wan Quan, who was following behind him silently as bait, couldn't help but feel shocked and raised his head sharply. Shock was written all over their faces. Damn it! Are you so ambitious? Submitting to the Buddhist kingdom and submitting to the Buddhist disciples are indeed two different concepts. The former is still an independent individual, but to a certain extent, it needs to meet the requirements of the Buddhist kingdom. But the latter is a vassal, a completely personal force. No one can command it except Shenjian, and it is completely out of the control of the Buddhist kingdom. This man has such a big appetite. He actually wanted to eat a quasi 8-star supernatural place head-on, without fear of bursting his stomach. Even for a Buddhist, this tone is too loud. But it may not work. After all, the name Buddha is synonymous to a certain extent. The Sand Folk Ghost stopped talking. If you are a disciple of Buddhism, you do have this qualification. Certainly. He just doesn't like it. Buddhas are just ghosts and gods. Even if they are infinitely close to the world-destroying level, they are still at the level of ghosts and gods. In the Pyramid Kingdom, there are more than one ghosts and gods of this level. Especially the last pharaoh, Cleopatra, could summon heaven-defying supernatural beings to come to her future body. One person is equivalent to 7 ghosts and gods. She can single-handedly control 3 ghosts and gods that are infinitely close to the world-destroying level. She is no better than the Buddha. Weak. But so what? Cleopatra was not yet imprisoned and buried in a pyramid tomb. In front of a super-large 7-star supernatural land, even real-world destroying ghosts and gods would not dare to act wild, let alone just ghosts and gods. The other side. The corners of Shenjian's lips curled up. His reason is not a lie. In his plan, he does intend to take over the Pyramid Kingdom. Because he knows that this can help him increase Luo Fengtian's attention to him in the 4th part, and also allow the protagonist to gain nothing, continue to seize luck, and seize the proportion of the plot that belongs to the protagonist. Do not forget. The Pyramid Kingdom accounts for 25% of the 103 incarnation, accounting for a quarter of the complete plot. If you want to successfully complete this hidden plot mission, you need to eat alone. However, the true Buddha is in the same lineup as him. No matter how much he eats alone, the true Buddha can still occupy a share. Moreover, eating alone in this way is suspected of robbing the protagonist of his credit, which is detrimental to the good brother character he has established, and it is easy for him to fall over with the ghost Buddha mother. Joining the royalists is even less acceptable. Even if the goal is achieved in the end, the relationship between Cleopatra and the Buddhist kingdom cannot be eased. Therefore, the best solution is to form a new lineup, overthrow everything, and become the master of the pyramid civilization. You can make him want both. Thinking. Not long after, the Sand Folk Ghost stopped. Arrive. As the sound rang out, an illusory oasis like a mirage is suspended in the air. On the oasis, buildings that resemble pyramids also stand in shadow. Breathtaking. Shenjian's eyes also showed some emotion. The Queen of Night's heavenly palace is spectacular enough, but I didn't expect Cleopatra's mirage to be even better. Put in the real world, it is a wonder through the ages. Any sky garden is nothing compared to this huge desert oasis with no end in sight. Timely. The voice of the Sand People Ghost sounded again, Buddha, this is the Pyramid Kingdom. If you completely integrate your own ghost realm into the mirage, you can successfully enter. Shenjian nodded slightly. The ghost realm unfolds. Wrapping the two of them together, they disappeared into the desert. Another wink. The scene in front of him has changed. There was an architectural style in front of me that clearly looked like the medieval period, and Lois was the main tone of the city. Huge bricks make up buildings. The breeze blowing carries grains of yellow sand. Shenjian looked around. The ghosts in this city basically wrap their heads with scarves and wrap their clothes with a piece of cloth. Most of the ghosts with sallow faces only covered their crotches with rags. Wan Quan rolled his eyes. The background here is a bit like ancient Egypt in the early Middle Ages, and the terror level of the ghosts is obviously much worse than that of the Buddhist country. I even saw Tsingyi level and white level ghosts. There was a hint of excitement in his voice. Some tears came to my eyes. This is called a game copy. There are fierce ghosts of all levels. Unlike the Buddhist kingdom, all ghost kings are the same. Those with a little bit of capital are either infinitely close to the top ghost kings, or they are the top ghost kings. His strength, which is infinitely close to that of an abyss-level ghost king, is completely unsatisfactory in the Buddhist kingdom, and he can barely protect himself. In this pyramid country, he is at least sure of being in the middle. Hear this. The Sand People ghost explained, the white-clothed, green-clothed, and red-coated ghosts you see are all slaves. If you look closely, you will see that their foreheads are branded with marks. According to the different marks, differentiate different masters. Under normal circumstances, it is best not to provoke those people. Although the life of a slave is not life, no one knows what level of slave master the master behind this group of slaves is. There is a very strict hierarchical order here. If you don't want to be marked as a slave while walking on the road, you'd better disguise yourself more strictly. This is true below the Ghost King level. Above the Ghost King level, even the top Ghost King may not dare to say that he is. You will not become a slave to ghosts and gods. So, finding a backer is the first rule for surviving in the pyramid country. After listening, Wan Quan couldn't help but clicked his tongue. All right. He took back his previous words. The environment here is even worse than that of Buddha country. At least in Buddha country, he won't worry about becoming someone else's slave at any time. But in the supernatural place with the ancient Egyptian background, this kind of situation can be seen everywhere. If you are really marked as a slave, you will never be able to wash it off, and you will have to live with this mark of humiliation for the rest of your life. This is undoubtedly the most unacceptable to human players. Shenjian said nothing. Listen quietly. His gaze has moved to the chat interface. Tianlong at Jason, according to the time, it's time for the true Buddha to arrive. Have you found the protagonist? Jason, we are just cooperating. Don't order me, I have my plan. The protagonist can be found at any time. Killing those bitches is the most important thing. Tianlong, if you Western players have any conflicts, resolve them as soon as possible without delay. Jason, you Dragon Country people don't need to tell you, it will be fine soon. Shenjian looked at it. The eyes are dark, like a pool of cold spring. End of chapter. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Something strange is coming? Fortunately, I am the king of hell of the 10th palace. Author, Shiyu Buletin Chigwa. Chapter 975. Buddhist country. Bang. Tianlong slapped the table, still sullen. These arrogant white ghosts really don't know what the point is. They don't care about things related to the protagonist. Instead, they want to kill a few women first. Cooperating with them is a really bad move. He looked at the replies on the chat interface, and his face, which still maintained a fake smile, was filled with a sinister look. Choosing people to devour, like a fierce ghost. In his eyes, plan above all else. All matters related to true Buddhist disciples are top priority. When cooperating with Dragon Kingdom players, the other party is also willing to obey his command, and the protagonist is put first in everything. But in the eyes of Western players, assisting the protagonist is not the first priority, killing fellow players is. He laughed angrily. If he hadn't been able to cross the desert and reach the pyramid country, he would have even wanted to tell these foreigners a false message to trap them, lest this group of people affect the progress of the mission. One player hesitated and said, "I probably know why these Western players want to kill people first. My supernatural power can affect some communication equipment, which makes me uninhabited on the internet." Not long ago, the headquarters of the Western Holy See was occupied by 10 people. Everyone must have heard the news that the country was submerged by a huge tsunami and turned into a swamp. I won't tell you the cause and effect of the matter. You all know it. What I want to say is that although the current Holy See was forced to disband, that gentleman once appointed a human being to become the chief of the West and to oversee all matters in the West. I checked, however, the leader is a princess from a Western principality, and she has been promoted to a 5-star player not long ago, so I thought that she should be the one these Western players want to kill. Hear this. Tianlong frowned high. A moment of surprise. Has the Western Holy See been dissolved? No one told him about this horse riding. To know. He had been invited to enter this special copy of the Buddhist kingdom more than half a year ago. He had no idea what had happened in the real world during the past half a year. Now, he actually heard that the Western Holy See had been dissolved. The headquarters was even flooded by a magnitude 10 tsunami. Sounds like it? It all seems to have something to do with the underworld. That lord seems to be referring to the king of hell in the underworld. He thinks quickly. In the blink of an eye, everything that happened in the real world was roughly clarified. It can be regarded as knowing why Western players led by Jason want to kill their own kind first. If the Western agent designated by the king of hell does not die, even if they can clear the dungeon, their fate will still be death once they return to the real world. Rather than that, it's better to cut the grass and get rid of the roots first. It's a matter of wealth and life, so naturally no one will be careless. As for the protagonist, true Buddha, it's not like he can't survive without players. In this case, Western players will naturally focus on killing people first. Certainly. Although he understood, he still couldn't accept it. He doesn't care whether those Western players will die in the future. He only knows that if the Western players don't take action, the protagonist will get less and less credit. After all, the fake Buddha at this stage can be called a 5-fingered mountain. Even just using your fingers can crush the protagonist to death. If he doesn't help the protagonist get more credit and be valued by the true Buddha temple, no one will know the sequel of the plot. Just thinking about it? Wan Quan, who had always kept a low profile, spoke. He is just an incarnation of a ghost slave, controlled by his real body. If his real body is moving, his thinking ability will be weakened, and even if he speaks, he will only be intermittently. But now, the real body is undoubtedly putting more thoughts on the incarnation. Tianlong, the plot of Pyramid Kingdom that you are familiar with should be a few years later, but now is the early and middle stages of the plot. Are you sure the information can be matched? As soon as these words came out, all the players looked at Tianlong. Really? According to Tianlong, when he followed the true Buddha to the Pyramid Country, the timeline was already a few years later. The plot at that time had entered the middle and late stages. Both the situation and the changes in the pyramid should not be in line with the present. Tianlong looked at Wan Quan with approval. The number one person in the Dragon Kingdom supernatural circle became more and more pleasing to him, and his thinking ability was not weaker than his own. He felt that he might be able to get him to join him and become a member of the 12 zodiac signs. Think about it. He smiled confidently, why not? In the first two lives, in order to go to the Pyramid Kingdom, the protagonist asked the Genfo Temple to collect specific information for half a year. Although most of it is not consistent with the present, as long as the specific development is known, so what's so hard about taking sides? According to the timeline, today's Pyramid country is divided into the Royalist Party and the Royal Party. The Royalist Party refers to the last pharaoh Cleopatra, and the Royal Party is the temple high priest and prince. Counting the time, there will be no more time. In half a year, Cleopatra will be publicly beheaded. By then, the Royalists will be in chaos, and the intensity of the resistance will become less and less every year. By the time the protagonist leaves, the riots have been basically controlled, and the Royalist Party's position is deeply entrenched. So, what we have to do is to have the protagonist establish a good relationship with the people in power of the Royal Party. If we can execute the last pharaoh Cleopatra in advance and weaken the resistance of the Royalists, this will be the greatest contribution of the vanguard army. Tianlong talked eloquently. Like a chess player, planning everything behind his back. It shows the calmness and confidence of the mastermind behind the scenes. The other players were overjoyed. The face is also full of smiles. Only King Quan's eyes were dark, and he didn't know what he was thinking. At the same time, Wang Quan's eyes were dazed for a moment, and then he said after careful consideration, "Sir, let's get some information out." Said. He then told all the information he had just extracted. Shen Jian raised his eyebrows. Full of surprises. Clam. Cleopatra was beheaded? This was beyond his expectation. He also thought that Cleopatra was also one of the female protagonists and would become one of the protagonist's subsequent supports. Unexpectedly, she turned out to be a supporting female character. It is still a background board with only a name and no plot content. In this way, it is basically certain that the role of the Pyramid Kingdom to the protagonist is only as a support team. Think of this. Shen Jian's eyes were even more interested. It is obviously impossible for the protagonist's team alone to account for 25% of the 103 incarnation. In this pyramid country, there are definitely other secrets, or opportunities, that are beneficial to the protagonist. Sir, we are now. Seeing that Shen Jian didn't speak, Wang Quan hesitated and said. He could see that Shen Jian seemed to really know Cleopatra, the previous pharaoh of the pyramid country here, otherwise there would be no obvious mood swings. And not only Cleopatra, but according to the news he heard at the time, the princess of the principality who was being hunted by Western players seemed to be Shen Jian's. If others don't know, how can he not know Shen Jian's identity? The Western spokesperson who was being hunted was undoubtedly appointed by Shen Jian. In other words, that can be considered a person from the underworld. Now, someone dared to pursue and kill people from the underworld. As the king of hell, Shen Jian would never fail to take action. Shen Jian said nothing. I don't know when, the dark eyes had already turned into a deep whirlpool. The next second, Shen Jian's eyes turned in one direction. A touch of lips and tongue. The voices of ghosts and gods resounded. Found it? The words fell. The three disappeared at the same time. Sand Mingi opened his mouth, wanting to say that I didn't join the you guys, and I didn't want to rebel, but when faced with Shen Jian's pair of deep, swirling pupils that were like an endless hell, his words were stuck in his throat and he couldn't say anything. Because he had an intuition that if he dared to force him to say anything, his life would probably be in danger. Forcing a good girl into prostitution, forcing a good girl into prostitution. At the same time, in an abandoned bluestone building, the princess of the principality whose ID is Jana is currently hiding on the semi-open air balcony on the top floor, using her field of vision to observe what's going on below. Next to her, squatting was a doll girl with an exquisite face, wearing a tarot skirt, holding a half-meter high rag doll tightly in her hands, as if she had stepped out of a fairy tale. On the place header, a panel symbolizing the player's identity is displayed. Fairy tales are all lies. Level 54. Sister Jana, how many people have you offended? There is a steady stream of pursuers. If this continues, the range within which we can escape will become smaller and smaller, and we will eventually be chased and intercepted. The content of the doll girl's words is full of powerless struggle. The specific expression on the face should be an expression of fear, panic, and despair in the eyes. But the fact is that the girl's face is not afraid at all, but full of excitement. It seems that this is quite fun. There is no sign of panic at all as the encirclement shrinks. Hear the words. Jana's eyes were full of coldness. Even though she looked like a female licker in front of Shenjian, she only knew how to moan and groan, but in reality, how could a player of her level and a female player be so fragile? Now being targeted and hunted by all Western players, she also sentenced these people to death in her heart. If she could return alive, she would definitely use all the power in her hands to drive out those people and their families. Thinking. She looked at the doll girl opposite. They are the only two female players in this 9-star dungeon, so their attitudes are naturally the same. In addition, she has saved each other once in other game dungeons. It can be said that the relationship between the two has always been very good. They are real best friends. The reason why she was able to escape under the noses of Jason and the others, and not become a slave and suffer humiliation, was also thanks to him. If her best friend hadn't had the ability to block supernatural media, she would have been directly targeted and killed remotely. Only. Her best friend is indeed a bit crazy. She was clearly desperate, but she still looked excited. For those who didn't know, she thought she was the one chasing others. Sister Jana, let's fight out. Those dog men intend to kill us. They also know our supernatural properties and specially use slaves to explore the way. We can take the initiative and take the first step. Killing one will make a profit, but killing two will make a profit, big profit. The doll girl showed a bloodthirsty smile and made a motion of wiping her neck. It didn't match her original delicate face. Rather like a runaway loli. Jana said nothing. Instead, the doll girl was relieved of the supernatural effect. She looked at the chat interface. The news stayed 2 days ago. At that time, she was forced too hard and locked by a supernatural curse. She could not stay in one place for more than a few seconds. She kept running around the city. She had no choice but to let it block all supernatural beings that could pass through the medium, including chat panel. Because of this, she never replied. I don't know if His Majesty got angry when she didn't reply. She was preparing to accompany him for a crime. On the chat interface, a new message caught her eye. King Yama, here I come. Something strange is coming? Fortunately, I am the king of hell of the 10th palace. Author, Shiyu Bulletin Chigwa. Chapter 976. King Yama, here I come. Just 3 words. Jana, who was originally worried about speculation, was shocked, and her eyes felt faintly moist. His Majesty came to see her? How could she be able to get the legendary Lord of Hades of the Underworld, the Supreme King of the Eli Empire, to travel thousands of miles from the Buddhist kingdom to the Pyramid Kingdom just to help her? This honor made it difficult for her to conceal her feelings. Praise the great Lord of the Underworld, you are so kind. If it weren't for the current situation, Jana would have really wanted to tell Shenjian in person that her respect for him was like a torrential river, endless. Sister Jana, what's wrong? Seeing Jana's face flushed and unable to hide her excitement, the doll girl was a little curious. She had just lifted the psychic shielding effect. I think it was because I saw who said what on the chat interface. Those guys are finished. Jana gritted her teeth and showed a cold expression. However, There was no longer any uneasiness in his expression, but rather a look of dependence. "Remember the reinforcements I said? They are coming from the Buddhist kingdom. Hear the words." The doll girl blinked Kazilan's big eyes and became even more curious. "Is that the guy from the Dragon Kingdom you mentioned? Even if he is also a 5-star player, there are 10 of us in the West. Are you sure he didn't come to die? However, he is quite capable. He can actually cross from the Buddhist kingdom to the desert. Moreover, Sister Jana, he would actually come here for you. Could you too be that kind of person, relationship, right? Speaking of which." Her eyes were full of amusement. He also shook his fist in a friendly manner and put his other hand into the gap between his fists. "What it means is self-evident." "What nonsense are you talking about, Your Majesty? He doesn't like me, and I'm not good enough for him." The doll girl wowed. "Sister Jana, why are you starting to be reserved? You are a real princess and a 5-star player. If you are not worthy, then who else in the real world can be worthy of him? I know beauty is in the eye of the beholder, but you have gone too far in beautifying it." Jana smiled bitterly after hearing her best friend's joke. For a fairy god who is famous in the history of Dragon Kingdom mythology, a princess is nothing. Even if she is the real queen on whom the sun never sets, she is just a weak mortal in front of the other party. She didn't dare to expect that such a majestic being would fall in love with her. But the sight of His Majesty traveling thousands of miles to come to her and give her support still made her heart beat fast. Just like a young girl who is pregnant, she can't help but jump for joy even if she hears just a little bit of news about her lover. "Don't worry. Since he said he's here, there's no need to worry about anything anymore. Let alone 10 5-star players, even 100 of them can only crawl in front of him." Jana smiled confidently. The melancholy between his brows disappeared, leaving only excitement. To this, the doll girl just curled her lips and didn't say anything disappointing. Anyway, she had already made a plan. When the pursuers arrived later, she would strike first, killing 1 to recoup her losses, killing 2 to make a big profit, and killing 3 to make a big profit. If she could break into the base camp of those dog men and cut off the dirty things they were causing trouble to the women, she would make a lot of money. As for the reinforcements Sister Jana mentioned, she didn't have much hope. After all, in her impression, the Dragon Kingdom had always lagged behind the Western world. Not to mention the player lineup. Among the top 100 players in the world, Dragon Kingdom only accounts for 34, while the West has a full 66, accounting for 2/3. The strongest players in the Dragon Kingdom were only promoted to the 5-star level not long ago, and they can be counted on one hand. On the other hand, in the West, there are 12 full members of the 12 seats, 12 5-star players, not to mention Lord of Heaven, the world's #1 player in the horror game. No matter how you look at it, the old sweetheart of Sister Jana who came to the Pyramid Kingdom is just like coming to die. But it is rare for the other party to have such courage. Just thinking about it. There was a sudden noise on the first floor of the bluestone building. There were footsteps approaching. The expressions of the 2 women changed slightly. Because they saw that as they released the supernatural shielding effect, the ghosts chasing them followed them like tarsal poison. It was a butcher ghost with a bulging belly, limbs thicker than 2 adult arms, and wearing a pig head mask. With every step he took, the whole building shook. All the evil ghosts along the way avoided each other like snakes and scorpions, not daring to get closer than 10 meters. 1. This butcher ghost exudes supernatural fluctuations at the level of an abyss-level ghost king. 2nd, the mask on the face of the butcher ghost is clearly a kind of slave mark, and it can enslave a powerful ghost of this level. It can be imagined that the slave master behind it is definitely not a good person. In this situation, no ghost dared to interrupt. Damn it, they were really targeting me, and I don't know what kind of supernatural curse was left on me. I didn't notice it at all. Jana had a calm face. Logically speaking, given the player's level of strength, even if he could contend with the Abyss-level Ghost King, he would not be able to brand him as a slave. But it's a pity. This is Pyramid Country. It is a supernatural place where slaves were bought and sold for their freedom. This Abyss-level Ghost King was bought by the 12 members headed by Jason. It cost 500,000 thriller coins to buy it. What made her grit her teeth even more was that she also paid for it. But now, the slave she jointly bought was hunting her for 5 days. She fled all over the city, but she could never escape. Now, however, after being stranded for a few minutes, he was caught up again. Thinking. The butcher ghost has climbed to the top of the building. The face wearing a pig head mask revealed a pair of scarlet and violent eyes, holding a kitchen knife in his hand as he stepped closer. The doll girl also showed an excited smile. The rag doll in her hands had been torn apart by her. A piece of Ligoi's leg bone fell out, followed by the hand bones and skull. Apparently, the girl sewed the bones of a fierce ghost into the doll and carried it with her forever. There was a bloodthirsty and fierce light in her eyes. Sister Jana, listen to me, we dismembered him and let him hunt us. I will sew him into a new doll and make him my collection. Jana. The corners of her mouth twitched slightly. Sister, do you really think I don't want to dismember him? We can't do it. One of them was level 60 and the other was level 54. They faced off against an Abyss-level Ghost King and had no chance of winning. Being able to fight for a short time is already the result of extraordinary performance. Not to mention, the longer they delay here, the easier it is for Jason and his party to locate the exact coordinates. Even if they are really lucky and dismember this ghost, how can they avoid being chased by players? But obviously, her best friend has gone crazy. He regarded this Abyss-level Ghost King as his prey. If she doesn't take a bite, no one will be able to persuade her. Jana gritted her silver teeth and raised her right hand, revealing an old and withered old man's arm hidden in her sleeve, as if she was ready for a supernatural confrontation. He, you are indeed my good sister. You understand me. We dismembered him together and made him scream. The doll girl was the first to attack. He rushed towards the pig-headed butcher. At this time. Stop, let go of that ghost. A penetrating sound startled the 3 people present. Everyone was shocked. From the corner of their eyes, they saw a figure rushing into the building not far downstairs, and the noise became louder and louder. There was also a sound of iron tools dragging on the ground and crackling. Faintly. It seems that I still heard it, and there was a vague and sad smile. Butcher ghost. Doll girl. Jana. The 3 people have different expressions. The only thing they have in common is that they look back at the same time. Just in time to see a dark shadow, he walked in with a ferocious smile. The sound of the iron tool dragging just now was the giant serrated sword in the opponent's hand. Every time he took a step, there would be an additional scratch on the ground, and there would be a clanging sound of lightning and flint. This scene. The butcher ghost couldn't help but take a step back. I looked at the kitchen knife in my hand, and then at the serrated knife in someone else's hand, and I suddenly felt inferior. Damn it! Brother, let's go together. You are too professional, you are more like a devil than me. Those who didn't know, thought you were the one collecting the debt. Brother, did you make the wrong target? These 2 women were designated by my slave master to kill. The butcher ghost said tentatively. Under normal circumstances, he wouldn't need to ask like this at all, he would just kill anyone who gets in the way. But this man was a bit fierce, more like an evil spirit than he was, and he wasn't sure. That's right, I want to know if there is a face I recognize under your mask. Shen Jian laughed sadly. The footsteps are getting closer. The butcher ghost kept retreating, breaking into a cold sweat. But when he heard these words, he felt relieved again. It turns out that he feels a bit like someone else, so that's easy to do, just take off the mask. The mask is a slave brand, but there is no problem in taking it off briefly. He just needed to let this man see his true face and clear up the misunderstanding. Then, the butcher ghost stretched out his hand, preparing to take off his mask. The next second, bang! The saw-toothed sword slashed down, and the butcher ghost fell to the ground with a crash, his mask cracking into several pieces. Ah, I made no mistake. Under your mask, you really have a torn face. Butcher ghost? Before death. He stared at Shen Jian in confusion with his unblinking eyes. I'm crazy. The person you know, whose face is as torn apart as I am right now. It's noisy. Isn't this the kind of face only a dead person can have? The way you recognize people is so humming stupid. End of chapter. Something strange is coming? Fortunately, I am the king of hell of the 10th palace. Author, Shi Yubuletin Chigua. Chapter 977. This moment. There was a brief silence on the field. Seeing the butcher ghost fall to the ground, his head split into pieces, the doll girl who had already rushed forward, looking like a bloodthirsty and fierce loli, suddenly stopped. He looked at Shen Jian with a horrified expression. Looking at this man who is not in the right state of mind and gets violent at the slightest disagreement. Even though she was crazy enough, she was also frightened by Shen Jian's actions just now. Omega. Where did this lunatic come from? Killing an abyss-level Ghost King with one knife, she didn't believe it if he didn't have the top Ghost King level. Think of this. The doll girl trembled. He stepped back violently. She is a little crazy, and she also likes to fly into flames, but that is a supernatural reaction that only occurs when she gives it a try. Under normal circumstances, her mental state can be barely maintained. Like, right now. She got out of the bloodthirsty and crazy state very well. Shen Jian took a step forward, and she took a step back. The body was quickly cornered. A huge shadow fell over her. A giant serrated sword, more than twice as big as her body. Hey, why isn't your face broken into pieces? Hear this. She turned pale. Suddenly, I felt that it was easier to accept being cut into pieces by the butcher ghost than being chopped into pieces by the man in front of me with a sinister smile. Your Majesty, don't make trouble. At this time, the doll girl suddenly heard her best friend and sister sighing helplessly. Doll girl? She tilted her head. Somewhat confused. I don't know who my best friend is calling. Then, the next second, something happened that shocked her. The man who had forced her into the corner with a ferocious smile on his face suddenly curled his lips and showed a very human expression. It's boring. I just saw that you guys are very aggressive. You dare to confront an abyss-level Ghost King head-on. I thought you had something to rely on. Shen Jian shrugged and put away the serrated sword in his hand. But there was no retreat. He still focused his scrutinizing eyes on the doll girl in front of him. His eyes were full of interest. Because he discovered that this little Western Lolita was a little special. The opponent is not Jigsaw who controls the ghost, but lives in symbiosis with the ghost. In Shen Jian's perception, there is a complete ghost living in this little Lolita's body, a Bloody Mary-style doll, but the method is not controlled like ordinary ghost masters, but roughly merges with the ghost into one. Under normal circumstances, once a ghost invades the human body, it will eat it. This is instinct. But this Bloody Mary doll didn't seem to want to harm the little Lolita. Instead, it seemed like, it was protecting her? Are ghosts protecting humans? Shen Jian has also seen this situation. That is the little girl Chi-Chi who survived the village massacre incident by the angels organized by the fallen angels. There is an old yellow dog following Chi-Chi all year round, and it is a ghost. However, The old yellow dog did not hurt her, but followed her. Same, follow the other person's side and protect the master. He felt that the situation of this Bloody Mary doll was probably similar to that of Kikai, but the way of protection was more thorough. More importantly, this little loli is currently only equivalent to a ghost controller who can control a ghost. Her development space and potential are no worse than the first person in a horror game. A real potential stock. If the three ghosts can be gathered together, or the Bloody Mary doll's terrifying level can be increased through feeding, the opponent's strength will soar faster than anyone expected. Thinking. Shen Jian withdrew his gaze. Turned sideways. When the doll girl saw this, she immediately ran out and hid behind Jana. He lowered his voice and said, "Sister Jana, this handsome guy is the reinforcement you mentioned. The way he appears is really special." Her tone was full of disbelief. "Is this human? Is this horse a human? Who has ever seen a human being who looks more like a ghost than a ghost? If you don't tell me, even if I have a big brainstorm, I won't think in the direction of humans. So damn professional." Even the real butcher ghost was deceived. "Oh no, I can't say it's a lie, because it's really just like a ghost in human skin." Janet twitched her lips. "I won't be able to fix it for a while." She herself never thought that Shen Jian's appearance would be so unique. Where is the promised ruler of the underworld, the supreme king? You at least carry out the image of a fairy and god. Immortals and gods can connect to the earth, but please don't connect to the underworld. Fortunately, I didn't reveal your true identity, otherwise the filter would be completely shattered. He is indeed a reinforcement. After adjusting her fluctuating emotions, Jana explained. Shen Jian doesn't want to be too impressive, but as His Majesty's spokesperson in the Western world, she still needs to help Shen Jian maintain his image and integrity. Hear this. The doll girl reluctantly believed it. He walked out doubtfully. A sweet smile appeared on his face. "Handsome brother, I'm glad to see you. You were so handsome just now. I like it. If you weren't Sister Jana's man, I would want to steal it." Her words were full of boldness. Not secretive at all. Shen Jian was startled. He glanced at Jana, who hurriedly lowered her head and didn't say much. Instead, he got straight to the point. "Where are the other players?" His eyes were dark. There was no warmth in the words he spoke. Dare to cross his bottom line, which is something Shen Jian cannot tolerate. Original. He also planned to retain the 12 highest status seats in the Western Holy See to assist Jana in managing the entire Western world, so that the underworld could receive the entire West unimpeded. But since this group of people wanted to rebel, he had no reason to show mercy. Three-legged toads are hard to find, while two-legged humans are everywhere. As long as he kills all the strongest players in the West, Nagano will be the strongest in the West. It will be a fault-like existence that no one can resist. By then, it will be more convenient to manage. The doll girl spoke first. "Handsome brother, I know where they are. They are so abominable that they dare to bully Sister Jana. You must not let them go." She blinked Kazilan's big eyes and looked at the handsome brother in front of her with admiration. He looked like he wanted to avenge Sister Jana. He was so handsome. People from the Dragon Kingdom are so courageous. They are much better than those soft-footed shrimps in the West who only know how to use their many to bully the small and the big to bully the small. If this wasn't her best friend's man, she would really want to snatch him away. Take a look at this man's tripod-like figure. Shen Jian said nothing. Instead, he looked at Jana. Jana was suddenly shocked. She was an old man who had experienced a dungeon with Shen Jian. Naturally, she understood what the other party wanted to know. She quickly said, "Your Majesty, a total of 66 Western players have entered. Except for the two of us, the remaining 64 there are 10 5-star players in total, 9 are members of the 12 seats, and the remaining one is a scavenger with no organization. The remaining 54 people are all around level 53. After entering the dungeon, the 12 members headed by Jason used the influence of the Holy See to quickly integrate everyone, and immediately went to the slave market to jointly purchase an Abyss-level Ghost King. With the help of the Abyss-level Ghost King, the Ghost King was used as a springboard to successfully join the Temple Sacrifice Slave Master faction, and now all Western players are under the Temple Sacrifice Slave Master faction. The Butcher Ghost who just chased us was the Abyss-level Ghost King we bought with money. However, after dedicating it to the temple to worship the slave owner, the other party just put an exclusive slave brand on it and returned it to us. After that, Jax and they must have realized that this 9-star copy was unusual and felt that there was hope for them to escape from the shackles, so they wanted to kill me to delay time. As Jana spoke eloquently, Shenjian quickly understood the reason. On the way to the Pyramid Kingdom, the Sand People Ghost also said that the status hierarchy in the Pyramid Kingdom is very strict. Those in lower positions cannot resist those above them. Violators can be lynched and killed at will. The lowest status is undoubtedly the slave. Even if he is a top Ghost King, his status will not be much higher as long as he is branded as a slave. Certainly. If the owner has a very high status, the situation is different. Next are the common people, herdsmen, merchants, and other common people. Then there is the slave owner, a product unique to the ancient Egyptian context. This is the biggest pillar of strength in this supernatural place. They are divided into ordinary slave owners, noble slave owners, and temple worship slave owners. The temple worships slave masters and belongs to the unique power of the pyramid country, the temple. The high priest of its temple was one of the sources who, together with the royal princes, launched a coup to seize the authority to rule the pyramids. Noble slave owners are meritorious people canonized by the royal family. Most of them are old people from the reign of Cleopatra, who are also currently attacking the Order of the Pyramids and are the source of the riots. The two groups confront each other and seize power. It caused turmoil and war that swept through the entire supernatural land. Think for a moment. Shenjian said, "The one who is chasing you is an Abyss-level Ghost King." Jana shook her head. Those people must have been observing the situation, but they were also afraid that we would fight to the death and drag them to death together, so they chose to send out the Butcher Ghost, but, now that the Butcher Ghost is dead, the players must have noticed it. Based on my understanding of Jason, I suspect that he will directly choose to report it to the sacrificial slave master and send more terrifying slaves to clear the place. Hear the words. Shenjian grinned. Wouldn't it be better to catch them all in one fell swoop? Let's go, kill them along the way, and tell them that this is the fate of betraying me. The words fell. The doll girl's eyes are brighter. There was a bloodthirsty and fierce light in his eyes again. Handsome brother, you understand me so well. Come on, let's kill them. I will tear them into pieces, sew them together, and make them into dolls that scream in pain. Shenjian cast an approving look. See it? The doll girl's face showed a somewhat sickly blush. It's like finding a like-minded confidant. A rush of excitement. Then she pointed in a direction. It seems to be saying, "Handsome brother, let's go together then?" Shenjian did not hesitate. Followed. Before leaving, he glanced at Jana. Jana. She just seemed to have read a meaning from His Majesty's eyes. Look, your best friend is more knowledgeable, so learn from it. No. Neither of you are mentally normal. How can I, a normal person, learn? You two are really working together, you have the same odor, and you feel like you are a den of snakes and rats. End of chapter. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. Something strange is coming? Fortunately, I am the king of hell of the 10th palace. Author, Shiyu Buletin Chigwa. Chapter 978. At the same time, in a small palace, a large group of white, black, and mixed race players gathered together. The leader was the leader of the Holy Knights with the ID Jason. He was the second among the 12 seats in the Western Holy See. In terms of strength, he was second only to the global thriller game. One person. The game level is up to level 65. It is the highest game level among all players in the field. With such strong yin chi, he is already infinitely close to the abyss level Ghost King. At this time, Jason covered his forehead and bared his teeth. On his typical Eastern European white face, his brown pupils were full of pain. This sudden reaction caught everyone's attention. They all stood up, looked around warily, thinking that the other party suffered an unknown supernatural attack. Damn it, the butcher ghost is dead. I can no longer feel the slave mark belonging to him. How is this possible? How could those two bitches kill an abyss-level Ghost King? For a long time, Jason recovered from the supernatural backlash. The words he spoke seemed to cause huge waves on the calm lake, shocking everyone. Was the abnormal reaction just now because the butcher was killed and suffered a supernatural backlash? What the hell? A 5-star player and a 4-star player are, at best, equivalent to the most ordinary Ghost King plus a top-notch red-clothed player who can temporarily compete with the Ghost King. With such strength, how can it be possible to kill the abyss-level Ghost King? The two are not on the same level at all. Did you just suffer a supernatural backlash? The source of the backlash came from the butcher ghost connected to your soul. An old man with a cane and a calm attitude stepped forward. Said seriously. This old man's ID is Zerv, and his face is somewhat similar to Jason. Even though he is already in his 60s, you can still see the calmness and gloominess of someone who has lived in the mall for a long time from his old face, which gives people a huge impression. Feeling of oppression. At first glance, he looks like a big shot. And that's exactly what happened. The old man was once the head of a large business group in the West and was worth hundreds of billions. Before the supernatural resurrection, no one here was qualified to stand in front of him. Even Jana, as a princess of the principality, could not rely on her status to be coquettish and willful in front of this old man. And he is also the father of Jason and is the 6th member of the 12 Western seats. In other words, the old man who looks to be in his 60s is also a 5-star player who stands at the pinnacle of the supernatural world. As soon as he spoke, the whole place fell silent. Jason nodded with an ugly expression. The backlash from the supernatural made his brain throb, like needles. Under normal circumstances, the death of a branded slave would not affect the slave owner, but in order to prevent the butcher ghost from looking down on him and wanting to kill his master, he chose a safer branding method. Therefore, as soon as the butcher ghost died, he immediately suffered a strong supernatural backlash. See this. All the Western players started shouting. The old man on crutches also had a stern look on his face and frowned. An abyss-level Ghost King was nothing in the Pyramid Kingdom, but for players, it was absolutely unmatched. But now, the escaping princess and her little followers caught everyone off guard and killed the butcher ghost after nearly 5 days of escaping. Something is obviously wrong. There was an outside force involved that affected the situation. But where did they find external help? Judging from the known situation, the death of the butcher ghost happened in an instant, otherwise his son should have discovered the abnormality long ago. In other words, this external force killed the butcher ghost in an instant. Someone with this kind of strength could only it is in existence above the top Ghost Kings. Think of this. The old man's frown deepened. Why is a top Ghost King willing to meddle in such nosy matters? But in any case, this matter is not something that players can interfere with. Moment. Zerf chose the safest plan, go and report to the temple priests, tell them to tell the butcher that the ghost is dead, and request to send more domestic slaves to snipe. Jason was stunned for a moment and frowned. Dad, the temple wouldn't care about us killing an abyss-level ghost king. If we hadn't used supernatural props to deepen our goodwill, we would. The conditions are not in the opponent's eyes. Did the supernatural backlash turn your brain off? We don't have enough weight to involve the so-called true Buddhist son, the protagonist of the world. Although the man from the Dragon Kingdom has other purposes, he has to admit that the other party does have the power of foresight. Ability, the temple is the power of the royal party, dragging the true Buddhist disciples into it. Are you afraid that the temple priests will be indifferent? Hear this. Jason was awakened on the spot. Yes. They were originally going to help the true Buddhist disciples, so it was natural for them to use each other's names to do things. And under the living sign of Genfozi, who has a background in Genfo Temple, the slaves and servants sent by the temple priests must be the best group. Not to mention the top ghost kings, even ghosts and gods may not be unable to mobilize. After all, the reason why the royal party was able to gain power was because of the behind-the-scenes control of the Genfo Temple. Thus, those two women were dead. With this thought, Jason quickly stood up and walked out of the palace door. At this time, his father's calm and authoritative voice came again, first impose a supernatural curse. Whoever kills the butcher ghost will be identified by the supernatural curse. At the same time, under the guidance of the doll girl, Shen Jian walked towards the location of the player. Along the way, this runaway little loli looked bloodthirsty and excited. The rag doll in her hand has been completely torn by her, even the catkins are in disarray. To this, Shen Jian only found it interesting. In the past, he wanted to use Kikai's case to study the future path of the Ghost Master, but unfortunately Kikai was too young, so he ran aground. Now, although this runaway little loli looks childish, from Jana's description, she is already in her 20s and is no longer a child. Just thinking about it? Abruptly, Shen Jian stopped. Looked down. A pig head mask had been attached to his body at some point. Judging from the style, it should be the one he just split into 4 pieces. Jana was walking beside her and saw this scene. His face changed slightly. I almost forgot that killing a slave will be marked. If the slave owner is willing, he can impose a supernatural curse and mark the person who killed the slave. Unless he dies, the mask cannot be removed by any means. The words just fell. Shen Jian took off the pig head mask attached to his body. Jana. She choked momentarily. He looked at Shen Jian with some resentment. You're making me so embarrassed. Go on. Shen Jian pursed his lips, indicating to continue. He picked up the pig head mask and looked at it with interest. Your Majesty, as far as I know, this is the exclusive slave brand of the temple sacrifice. It is highly recognizable. There are 12 kinds in total. It is the 12 zodiac signs of the Dragon Kingdom, and the pig head is one of them. It is said that this kind of slave mask has a supernatural effect when worn. It will be gradually brainwashed in a subtle way. Once you put it on, you will never want to take it off. After most slaves put it on, they will turn into machines that only know how to kill. The butcher ghost was originally just a bankrupt small businessman. When he became a slave and was bought by us, he was even more cautious, but when he put on the pig head mask a few days later, he completely turned into a butcher, which was very scary. Hear the words. Shen Jian's eyes became even more interested. Watched for a while. Immediately put the mask on your face. Doll girl. Her eyes widened. I don't know what Shen Jian's intention was. Didn't Sister Jana say that once you put on this mask, you will disown your relatives and never want to take it off again? Did this handsome brother not humming hear or understand? In the event of a serious change of temperament, the two of them would be no match for each other. Subconsciously, she took a step back. But the next second, She retracted her foot in great pain. Gan. I almost forgot, compared to the butcher ghost who became ferocious after putting on the pig head mask, the handsome brother himself seems to be more ferocious. What am I so worried about? What I should be worried about is the possibility of supernatural beings in the pig head mask. The other side. Shen Jian ignored the two women's reactions. The moment he put on the mask, a voice suddenly emerged from the bottom of his heart. My evil side, tell me, what do you like to do most on weekdays? Woman Shen Jian simply said with shock. No, I mean, do you have any more evil thoughts on weekdays? Yes, stealing other people's women. Pighead mask. Ah, this. You really don't shy away from people. Although I say you have a bad side, there is no need to behave so badly. He is a killing mask, not a pervert mask. He induced slaves to develop in the direction of killing, not in the direction of thieves. Shouldn't you humming want to kill someone every day? The pighead mask does not believe in evil. Asked again, besides, is there anything else that can make your blood boil and give you a new lease of life? He emphasized his tone on business. Shen Jian answered without hesitation, of course, you can hum up other people's wives and girlfriends in front of their husbands, boyfriends, and childhood sweethearts. It makes my blood boil. What, you want to help me? Pighead mask. Today, I can't talk anymore. This pervert never leaves other people's wives. And the faith is strong. He was afraid that if this man wore it on his face for a long time, his orientation would change from excessive killing to perversion. This is too scary. Farewell. Whoever loves to curse, I don't want to anyway. Next moment. The pighead mask comes off. He took the initiative to fall off Shen Jian's face, and did not stick to it, but jumped away. It's like running away from a plague god. Don't dare to get involved. Unfortunately. Shen Jian just stretched out his hand and grabbed it back. Put it back on your face. You and I have different interests. Let me go. I won't be happy here with you. It's useless if you hold on to me. A voice emerged from the bottom of Shen Jian's heart again. It's just that compared to the bewitchment just now, this voice seemed more helpless, or in other words, it sounded like a mouthful of old blood is choking in the heart. After all, this man is as bad as he gets. He cannot be coached. On the contrary, he was afraid that he would be counter-trained by the other party. What a bad luck. End of chapter. Something strange is coming? Fortunately, I am the king of hell of the 10th palace. Author, Shiyu Buletin Chigua. Chapter 979. At this time, the supernatural consciousness in the pighead mask is very painful. Although he is not a human being, this guy is a real ghost, and an evil ghost with a tendency to develop in a perverted direction. He had bewitched slaves so many times, but this was the first time he saw someone with such strong beliefs that even bewitched his mind. This made him feel that if he didn't leave, he might not be able to leave at all. But he tried desperately to get away from this man's face, but he couldn't get away. He panicked. Brother, you are not my type, and I don't meet your sexual orientation requirements. Why don't you let me go? Let's go back to our respective homes and find our own mothers. Isn't this good? Waves of ghostly sounds rose in Shen Jian's heart. Shen Jian grinned, you marked me and now you want me to let you go? What nonsense are you talking about? Anything I like can only be mine. Pighead mask. What the hell are you talking about? But we are incompatible with each other. Don't you hate that I am always tempting you to kill in your heart? This is for our own good. The pig-headed mask gave sweet advice. Totally speechless. If he had known that this guy was still a domineering master, he should not have separated his consciousness and marked the other party. Sometimes, he really wished that he was a dragon head mask. In that case, he could actively teleport back to the source through the medium, instead of it can only be parasitic in the pighead mask and be used casually like a 1,000-man rider. His life is miserable. I like. Shen Jian was careless. Brother, forceful melons are not sweet. And let me tell you, the fact that you just killed the butcher ghost has been known through the media. The temple priests also sent more pig-headed zodiac signs with my consciousness. Slave, you can't leave anymore, but if you return my consciousness, I can tell you how to avoid the search of these pig-headed slaves. Hear the words. Shen Jian finally raised his eyebrows. Not because of the pighead mask suggestion, but through the other party's words, I learned that there are many such slave masks. It seems. This mask is just a replica, the real master mask is elsewhere. And there are actually as many as 12 masks as the main masks. In Shen Jian's perception, this mask is very strange. It can not only separate the consciousness into various replicas through the main surface, but also ignore the distance. There are as many such replica masks as there are slaves, and it can also synchronize all the replicas. What kind of outrageous core processor does it take to track the location and information between slaves? The underworld needs such artificial intelligence. Otherwise, when the underworld comes to the upper world and the 6 paths of reincarnation officially runs, he, the sole manager of the underworld with the 10th temple of Yama, will always be bound to the endless hell, dealing with the reincarnation of thousands of dead souls at all times. Even if he could temporarily let others take his place, tens of thousands of people die every day in the world. How many people would he need at the same time to handle the affairs of the 10 Yama halls? In this situation, an artificial intelligence zodiac mask with a multi-core processor can assist him in accomplishing all this. The essence of development is for a better life. If there was an easier way, he would naturally seize it. Think of this. The smile on Shen Jian's face became even stronger. He wants to order this zodiac mask. Where is your main face? Seeing that the pig-headed mask no longer made any sound, old Shen Jian said. Pig-head mask. Emma. Even if you want to take advantage of me, you still want to take advantage of the main body? Why is your face so big? He remained silent. Ignore Shen Jian anymore. See this. Shen Jian is not annoyed either. He smiled sinisterly, it's okay if you don't say anything. When I kill all the slaves wearing pig-head masks and gather all your consciousness bodies, it won't be okay if you don't show up. Finished. Shen Jian took off his mask. Look away. He happened to see the doll girl looking at him, her eyes full of vigilance, as if she would take her best friend away if something went wrong. Handsome brother, you don't have the urge to kill, right? Shen Jian's lips curled up, don't mention it yet, I really want to kill people for fun now. I want to break other people's heads bit by bit and smash their skulls. Especially because I just thought of a wonderful technique, which is to wrap someone's neck with a chain, hang it from the beam, then drag the other person's feet underneath, increase the strength bit by bit, and finally let the other person the head and body are separated. Doll girl. Her pupils suddenly shrank. Is the handsome brother really affected by the pig-head mask? This technique is very cruel. It's not that the most heinous of crimes are unimaginable. Unless I have personally experimented, I cannot describe it in such detail. And the handsome brother is not that kind of person at first glance, so isn't it obvious where this evil method comes from? It was obviously instilled by the pig-head mask. Pig-head mask. First of all, thank you for affirming my professionalism. Secondly, I really didn't teach this shit. In the end, I was also shocked. I couldn't even imagine such a cruel method of committing a crime. How dare this man's perversion also be reflected in this crime? For a while, everyone looked at Shen Jian with suspicious eyes. Only Jana couldn't help but cover her face and hold her forehead. probably because he remembered the ghost street that he had experienced with Shen Jian in the northern border of the Eli Empire, and how Shen Jian played evil ghosts and made people laugh. Every time he thought about it, he was full of psychological shadow. Your Majesty, stop teasing her. Business is important. If we don't hurry up, those players will probably leave. She reminded. The doll girl also woke up with a start. He looked at Shen Jian angrily. Shen Jian pretended not to see it, laughing and moving on. The Bloody Mary doll in this little loli's body does have self-awareness. To a certain extent, this person and the ghost are simply the perfect partners. Even if the little loli is unconscious, Bloody Mary can still control the little loli's body. Keep moving. This situation is almost no different from two souls in one body. One person can be used as two people. It is simply the most perfect route for a ghost master. The only difficulty is how to make ghosts willingly protect humans. Soon, Shen Jian had already approached a small palace under the leadership of the doll girl. This is where Western players gather. Near one of the temples. It is awarded to the player by the sacrificial slave owner side that the player joins. Shen Jian's eyes were dark. In the Pyramid Kingdom, a super-standard 7-star supernatural land, the largest ruler is undoubtedly the royal family, and under the royal family, the temple is the largest. The high priest of the temple is equivalent to the prime minister of a country. Even, in the context of ancient Egypt, the status of the high priest of the temple was far above that of the prime minister. After all, in this era, the power of kings is divinely delegated. The high priest is the giver of divine power. To a certain extent, the words of the temple high priest are far more effective than the ordinary pharaoh. If Cleopatra's status was not too high and difficult to shake in a short period of time, the high priest would not even need a coup to replace the pharaoh. One can imagine what a transcendent position the temple holds here. What the player joins is a medium-sized temple among many temples. He becomes a member of the local worship slave owners and belongs to the temple camp. Just thinking about it? On the street not far away, in a luxurious temple, slaves wearing pig head masks kept coming out and scattered throughout the city. At the same time, the scarlet panel flashed. Trigger hidden tasks. Hidden mission, avoid being chased by the temple. Content, the temple is the largest force in the Pyramid Kingdom. The wanted target usually does not survive for 24 hours. If the temple that is mainly responsible cannot capture the target within 2 hours, the second temple will spontaneously join the chasing team and stack them up in sequence until the wanted target dies. Task requirement, survive 24 hours. Note, this hidden mission is a battle royale mode. Every 2 hours, the player's whereabouts will be exposed for 20 minutes. Note, players need to ensure that all members survive, otherwise the mission will fail. End of this chapter.